Okay.
Shabbat Shalom, good Shabbos. There's something vaguely strange about using a microphone for you nice people when we're this close. And also I have that kind of voice where I come in, hi, how are you? Shabbat Shalom, good Shabbos. You are? Good Bob? Ah, how are you, Bob? Mark, very good. Okay. Okay, so I'll be nice.
So
I'll
watch
be
your
nice
language
to you.
tonight.
I won't tell you that Jerry owes me money. Okay. No, it's not
How's
true. It's not true.
Joni?
It's not true.
Joni's good. She's home.
I know she's
She won't
home.
come 2 days in a row. She's come tomorrow.
Shabbat Shalom, thank you for coming.
Good job. Just watch your step.
And
Watch your step.
Cantor will not be with us this evening. His brother is visiting from Montreal, which explains the accent.
Yeah, right.
And the Argentinian part of Montreal. No, he's a sweet guy. I love the Cantor. I truly do. But I'll be very honest with you. You know, I worked alone for about 40 years, and it made staff meetings fairly easy to organize. And I only had to deal with one ego. Well, tonight, I have mixed feelings about this Torah portion because it's not narrative. The Israelites are aware. Okay, multiple choice. Coney Island, the wilderness, Washington Heights.
We'll go with the wilderness.
Yes.
Take a wild guess.
Washington Heights, yeah, when I went there. Okay, it could be, we're not really sure how old this section is because what we tend to do, what scholars tend to do, this is all the laws, slavery, the Arei Miklat, the cities of refuge, the redress of damages, this case where two guys fight and one guy knocks out the other one's eye, which is very controversial. And the only, what they call an extra-biblical parallel, you like that extra-biblical, meaning it's not biblical, it's from outside the Bible, is the Code of Hammurabi. Now, Hammurabi was a Babylonian emperor, 754 BCE. Who remembers 1754 BCE? Yes, they had just come out with bell-bottoms, and the Beatles were first getting started. I never liked Rubber Soul. Does anybody like Rubber Soul? Okay. You like that? Okay, I'll give it another listen, only for you, Al. Well, anyway, he was the sixth Babylonian king, Hammurabi. It's a wonderful name for a cat. If you have a Siamese cat, you cannot lose with Hammurabi. Hammurabi, Nebuchadnezzar, although our Christian friends tend to pronounce it Nebuchadnezzar, which sounds more like a disease. But he in thas days, you didn't make up the law code yourself. You received it from a god. In this case, he receives this fairly famous bas-relief showing the Hammurabi standing there in front of a throne. And who was seated on the throne? Shamash. Shamash, from which we get the word Shemesh, meaning sun. He is the sun god. And this is a very useful thing. It was the Middle East. The sun was pretty fierce, so it made sense for them to worship the sun. We know also if you go south to Egypt, they had a sun god as well named Ra. That's where we get the name Ramses, son of Ra, okay? Because Ramses worshipped the sun god more than anything else. And this was first discovered in 1901. It is on display in the Louvre if you want to go look for it. That would be nice. That'd be so cool, yeah, the Louvre. When I was dating Ann Beth, I always took her to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and it's very strange that a nice yeshiva boy should always wind up in the northern medieval, a lot of crucifixion scenes. And I'm wondering, why am I here? So we always tried to bug out and go to the Impressionists. But I like the exact painting that they used to do. Well, let's take a look at some of the codes. I'm going to tell you our code, and the thing you should know. Obviously, we're not in favor of slavery. I've been dealing with Frederick Douglass in my American Literature Survey course, as well as the great debate between Booker T. Washington, who believed that African American people should not ask for equal rights, they should ask for a job, and Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, who felt that more and more African Americans, just the boys unfortunately, but it was 1901, should go to college. Well, getting back to this, we're talking about a form of slavery where someone owes money and the court takes them in charge and sells them into slavery to make money to pay their debts. Now just imagine if that law was still in effect, with all the plastic, the money people owe on their plastic in this country alone. If God forbid they came back with this mercantile slave system, It would be very fascinating indeed. Is there a prejudice between Hebrew slaves and Canaanite slaves? Yes, indeed. You betcha. Oh, yes. A Hebrew slave, an Eved Ivri, serves for 6 years, and he goes out free. And a Canaanite slave serves for his entire life. Oh, wow. So that was definitely a certain prejudice. And I'm not defending it. I'm just trying to say, if you're going back hundreds, thousands of years, these things have been known to happen. In the meantime, let's just say, give me a name for my Hebrew slave. Hebrew name. Any Hebrew name? Joshua, very good, Yoshua. So Yoshua gets sold into slavery because he hit the plastic a little bit too much. And his master says to him, tell you what, Josh, you want to get married? And he says, well, I guess so, I don't have cable. So they get married and proceed to have babies. You've got one Joshua, Mrs. Joshua, and several Joshuettes. What happens, Joshua, it's six years, and the master goes over to him and says, good news, you're free. And Joshua says, oh boy, I'll tell the missus, we can pack. And the boss says, what does the boss say?
You go by yourself.
You go out free. Free in this case doesn't mean free without a spouse. It means, sadly, free without a family. And so Joshua says, oh, but you go to the mezuzah. These are the doorposts, okay? Mezuzah is not just the plastic or silver geschäft attached to the doorpost. Mezuzah means the doorpost itself. The lintel is called the mashkov, and they take you to the doorpost with an awl. Surely we all know what an awl is. Yeah. All in all. AWL. We had a shoemaker when I was a kid. Oh my God. Remember the shoemaker? Mm-hmm. Is there a like 7 years ago, I did some research, and there was one shoemaker left in all of Coral Springs. I don't know if he's around anymore. Anyway, you take the awl, you borrow it from the shoemaker, and first you have to clean it off and sterilize it. Then you poke a big gauge there. But why do they do that?
Because it's identifiable.
Identifiable, that's true, yes.
Well, you can put something in the hole so it doesn't close up, and that would be easy to identify.
Yes, there's space to let.
Also, it's a lot of blood.
Yeah, it's kind of icky. That's why every so often I thought that I would get a pair of those magnetic earrings and wear them to a temple board meeting. God say, be servants to me, don't be servants to each other. Obviously, our man Josh did not hear this, that, he made himself a servant to another. Although that's not really fair to Josh, because after all, didn't he get sold into slavery by the court? Yeah, pretty much. Okay, so let's see what else we have here. If a man sells if a man sells his daughter as a slave, she shall not be freed as male slaves are. If she proves to be displeasing to her master, he must let her be redeemed. He cannot sell her to outsiders because he broke faith with her. Well, this is kind of sad. I have a daughter myself. She's not a little girl. She's 36, but still, good Shabbos. But still, isn't that sad that a man should have the right to sell his daughter into slavery?
Yeah.
Okay, silence gives consent. Yes, that is pretty awful. That is. For example, that famous bit where Rebecca has just impressed the heck out of Eliezer, the servant of Abraham, because he made a little deal with God, Eliezer did, and he said, this is way back in Bereshit, in Genesis, he says, Lord God of my master Abraham, which I think is so charming. He doesn't say my God. It's kind of like he's got God on loan. He says, when I get to this town of Haran, where I'm supposed to do some being a shadchan. What's a shadchan?
Matchmaker.
Yes, a matchmaker. I'm glad we worked this out before. Really paying off. Shadchan in modern Hebrew means a stake.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, it really does about the same thing, only less painfully. Anyway, so he says, if the first woman who comes out of a house and says, I will water your camels and your donkeys and you and your men, she shall be the designated wife for my master Isaac. And just as he finishes saying the blessing, the prayer, boom, a door opens. I always think of those little cuckoo clocks. You know, as soon as the hour struck, boom, there's the cuckoo. The expression is aftik moit.
That?
Yeah, that's you
Big
know,
girl?
Yeah, she's got substance. This is very important. You don't want the girl to be so thin that when she turns sideways, she disappears. And she comes out and she's got her trusty jug on her shoulder from Crate and Barrel, and she goes over to the well and he says, "Excuse me, miss, would you water my animals and me and my boys?" And she says, "Sir, I will not only water them but you and also in half the village," and so on. And he stands in amazement that God granted his prayers so quickly. You see? All right, so later on, who comes out? Lavan, her brother. And what do we think of Lavan? Is he a stand-up guy?
No.
No, he's an Indian guy. It's like you turn around, you feel something, he's taking your wallet. He is the prototype for all four flushers everywhere. Where'd that expression come from anyway, four flusher? Okay. Yes.
Deck of cards.
Oh, okay. And what is the flush? I mean, I know.
Flush is five of the kind. And so you do four, you're faking it.
Oh, okay. Very good. You see, at Yeshiva, we didn't play poker at all.
Well, you
Okay.
didn't play it well anyway.
Well, we were lucky to play war and slap the jack. All right, so Lavan says, Sir, come to my house. And you never hear anything about the father. Okay, the whole house is run by the sister and the brother. He says, "Come to my house, and you'll take your shoes off, and I'll wash your feet." You know, if I had just walked 500 miles, and somebody said, "Take your shoes off, and I'll wash your feet," I'd say, "Now, can't you just get me some foot powder? That would really be much better." Anyway, so he tells the story. They say, "You want to eat something? I will not eat until I've told my tale." And the tale he tells is clearly, I need this lovely young woman to come with me back to my place, and she will marry my servant Isaac. Yes, that's correct. And they actually ask Rebecca if she wants to go with him. That's the only time in the entire Torah, I think in the entire Tanakh, the entire Hebrew Bible, that they ask a woman's permission for doing anything. Because they say, "You want to go with this guy? We don't even know this guy. You ever seen this? It's nice of you to pump water for this guy, but now he's asking you to go home with him." She's, "I will go. Elech." Wow. She's good. And she turns out to be the most dynamic of the matriarchs. That's what I love about Rebecca. Okay, getting back to this stuff. What have we got? All right. Makei ish vamet mot yumat. There is capital punishment in the Torah. Okay? And I think there is capital punishment in the great state of Florida. I think we're up there with Texas. We're not as bad as Texas, but we're up there. It's so weird because coming down here, I mean, I didn't come down straight, coming from New York where they did away with the death penalty. I don't want to get into that. That's heavy stuff. We can talk about it sometime. But in the Torah, it does say capital punishment, and the rabbis in the Talmud were horrified. Okay? Now, if you look at the invisible whiteboard over here, what we have, the Torah is in the middle. Okay? And around the boundaries of the Torah is the Mishnah. We're talking about the 1st to the 3rd century. And around the Mishnah is the Talmud, is the Gemara. Mishnah and Gemara together equal the Talmud. Meaning that if you see something horrifying in the Torah, it's not a regular thing, but they will quietly legislate it out of existence. The rabbis will vote on it, the rabbis will bring all kinds of opposing verses, and eventually it will disappear. And what really happens is they so many, it's not codicils, is it? You know, conditions to the law of capital punishment that it quietly disappears. It's a lot more lenient than you would find in civil law here in America, which is based for the most part on Blackstones and Coke. But what happens is, even as the felon is being taken to the gallows or whatever, they have 4 different types of execution too, which were very rarely practiced. I actually had to memorize them. Who created in his anger the 4 executions of the court? Skila, srefa, hereg, v'chenek, stoning, burning, decapitation, and garroting. Yes, garroting, just like happens in The Godfather. The Godfather was very useful for illustrating all those different methods, even though they weren't Jewish. Okay, but getting back to this, as the felon is being taken to the place of execution, and we did not do crucifixion, no indeed. The Romans did that, they learned it from the Carthaginians. We didn't crucify you-know-who, okay? Because it's a horrible way to die. The 4 methods I described to you, I'm not in favor of them, certainly, and they must have been painful, but they were quick. That was the thing. And as the felon is being taken to the place of execution, they keep potential witnesses on both sides of the path, just off chance that one of the witnesses will say, oh wait, I remember some piece of evidence that might exonerate this fellow. And that's really what they did. By the time the Romans come, it's a big mess. They start executing everybody. Let's talk about if 2 men fight and one of them punches out the other one's eye. Okay? In the Code of Hammurabi, it says very clearly you punch out the other guy's eye. Well, that's fine. Which leads us to the line in Fiddler. Then the whole world will be blind and toothless. Yes, yes indeed. What happens is this. If somebody, God forbid, punches out somebody else's eye, it's the beauty of being Jewish, where you say, God forbid, for a totally, you know, these are people you never even met, you're just talking about them. What happens if you don't say, God forbid? Something bad, Kinahara, could happen, poo-poo-poo. See, this is great. You know, Jews, we have education, we have graduate school, we're professionals, and it all comes down to still doing the Kinahara poo-poo-poo that my mother used to do, even though she was a college graduate too. Okay, go figure. All right, so if they're fighting and one of them punches out the other one's eye, you don't take out the perpetrator's eye. Instead, you go to court, and you calculate what is the value of the lost limb to the person who suffered the damage. If he's a ditch digger, then clearly his eye is not so valuable to him as if he's a jeweler. But still, you have to pay for pain and suffering. You have to pay for him wearing a patch for the rest. He was using binoculars, it reflected the light, and a sharpshooter took out his eye. He never got recognition. He never got a medal from the British. It's really pretty horrible when you think about it. But in this instance, you figure out all of those issues that apply. When men fight and one of them pushes a pregnant woman and a miscarriage results, but no other damage ensues, the one responsible shall be fined, as the woman's husband may exact from him. Which means what? From this, we get the law. I don't have time to tell you exactly how we got from point A to point B. But Jewish law holds that if the birth of the baby should cause harm to the mother, either physical or mental, then the woman can exercise her right of choice. And I don't want to be insulting to anyone's feelings or opinions. This is simply kosher Torah. And indeed, see, that's the thing between us and, very nice, some of my friends are Catholic, but we don't do moment of conception. We don't do that kind of thing. We don't have big billboards off 95, if you go to certain parts of the south. But rather, what you do have is that if the baby dies prior to the Pidyon Haben, that is the redemption of the firstborn, meaning that it has to be at least 30 days old. If it dies before that, it is buried without a funeral. And thank God I've been doing this, the rabbinate for a long time, as I said, over 40 years. And I only had one instance. It was very sad. It was a couple, she was Jewish, and they had a baby. They didn't have a baby, I'm sorry, she had a miscarriage. Now technically, that miscarriage ought to have been buried with no ceremony whatsoever. But it was so sad. It was just a sweet young couple, and they did want closure. So because it was a funeral home that was family owned, and we had done business with them for many, many, many years, I'll never forget, it was just the four of us. The funeral director provided a little tiny casket. There was me, there was the couple, and there was the chairperson of our Chaver Kadisha, our burial society. And I did a little ceremony for them. And of course it was terribly sad, but that is one of the instances where you feel, this is why I became a rabbi. This is the point. It's not just doing services, which is important. It's not just bar bat mitzvah. It's being there when people need you. And I will never forget that. So you understand, according to halacha, according to Jewish law, I could have said no. But there's the rub. Now, I'm not being insulting to anyone, but I've always felt the Orthodox rabbi has the easiest job in town. All he has to do is say no. The Reform rabbi frequently will say yes. The conservative rabbi will say,
Maybe.
It's the gray area, meaning that, and my entire career, you might say, I've lived in the gray. And it's not always comforting, but at least you have a certain degree of leeway. Okay? Shabbat Shalom, good Shabbos. Thank you so much. And we'll light candles.
How do you do? Okay. Come up, light candles. Cantor is visiting with his brother from Montreal.
I know.
Oh, yeah.
Give them.
Oh, very interesting.
All right, all the ladies and
We should see a whole lot.
we'll all kind of drift in this direction.
I don't know what to do. I don't know whether it's up here or I just don't know what to do. She sleeps with her, huh? A what? Is that what they do?
Okay, we wave our hands over the candles, cover our eyes. Baruch Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu mitzvot tivanu, lehadlik ner shel Amen. From the eyes, asher kiddushanu mitzvot Mitzivanu, mitzivanu, lahadlik ner. Mitzivanu, mitzivanu, lahadlik ner. Mitzivanu, mitzivanu, lahadlik ner. Shel Shamar. Amen. Turn to the person next to you, wish them good Shabbos. Good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos, good Shabbos.
Shabbat Shalom. Yep. Shabbat Shalom. Good Shabbos. Shabbat Shalom.
Yes.
Well, we're sitting, and I come on cross boundaries. Hey, don't you ever go there to get a bill? Come in here and and you see us, you come and sit with us. No, you would never. Good Shabbos.
Okay, no more friendly. We'll close it down. Yes. Okay, good Shabbos, Al. I snuck that in.
Oh, wait.
Change your seat, Ken.
Yeah, I need it. Could you pass me my open book?
Okay.
But after the
What I used to do
What's
was,
it doing?
we're going to start on page
good.
13, but I always did a little niggin, little tune.
Oh, it doesn't say so.
And he may be controversial, but I do like Shlomo Karlbach. So we're going to try this. It's a wordless tune, but it's K'chui Machem Devarim Shuvu V'Shuvu El Hashem. Take with you words of Torah, return to the Lord your God. And I think I may have told you this, but I had a congregant who was sort of our choir director in my previous congregation, and she was totally in love with Debbie Friedman, let her rest in peace. And I liked Shlomo Karlbach. And I said, why don't you like Shlomo? She said, oh, because all of his tunes are, it starts out low and then gets high. And I said, yeah, you're right. On the other hand, Debbie Friedman ripped off Peter, Paul, and Mary every chance she got. So what can I say?
See you guys.
Okay.
Arthur did it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm wearing a jacket. Page 13. But let's focus on bringing Shabbat and doing this tune. I'll do the first line, and we'll try it together. Together. And the second part, which is a little higher. Second part together. And finish. A million years ago, my mother had this Columbia phonograph. She called it the Victrola. I felt like saying, Ma, you know, if it was a Victrola, you'd be wearing stays and a little bonnet in your hair. But I didn't know. See, they had records. Everybody remembers LPs, 33 1/3, and that kind of thing. I asked my mother once to get me a rock and roll album, so she went to May's department store on 14th Street and bought me Jackie Wilson. Okay, I'm okay with Jackie Wilson, but he's not top drawer. Anyway, I went poking through the albums once, and there between the Three Penny Opera, which my mother had to stop playing because I was 5 years old and running around the house singing off-color lyrics, my father had Shlomo Karlbach at the Village Gate. Oh my God. Art de Lugoff's Village Gate. Remember Art de Lugoff? He had the D and the apostrophe and Lugoff, and it was Delugov, okay? He wasn't Italian. He was Russian or something. But he was doing a live concert at the Village Gate, and on the second side, in the middle of one of the songs, somebody drops a glass. One of the waiters drops a glass. And what does everybody yell out? Mazel tov. Mazel tov, right there on the album. Okay, page 13. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaShorei, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech, Malachei Amlachim, Kadosh Baruch Hu, B'achem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech, Malachei Leichem l'shalom, malachei hashalom, malachei elyon. B'melech malachei hamlachim, kadosh baruch hu. Page 21 for the L'chadodi. L'chadodi lekrat kala, b'nei Shabbat lekadela. L'chadodi lekrat kala, b'nei Shabbat lekabela. L'chadodi dodi, l'chadodi lekrat kala, b'nei Shabbat lekabela. L'chadodi lekrat kala, b'nei Shabbat lekabela. L'krat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, ki lekor abracha, merosh miketem nesucha, sav maaseh v'mashavat tila. Lecha, lecha, dodi, dodi, lecha, dodi, lekrat kala, b'nei Shabbat lekabela. Lecha, dodi, lekrat kala, b'nei Shabbat lekabela. Please rise, 22, fourth stanza, face the door through which the Sabbath king will enter. Ohoi v'shalom b'derech bala, kam b'simcha u'tzacha, tov emunei yachzela, oricha lecha. Lecha, lecha, dodi, dodi, lecha, dodi, lekrat kala, b'nei Shabbat lekabela. Lecha, dodi, lekrat kala, b'nei Shabbat lekabela. Please remain standing. We'll turn to the Baruch Hu, which is on page 28. And would you gentlemen honor us by opening the ark, please?
I will do.
Okay, what you have to do is. No, what, no, that's fine. Just, open the door and fold it, back, I'll show you what to do there. Just fold it over there. Okay? And now the, curtain is a manual, so you just grab it to the middle and kind of pull. Now we bow
wanna
towards
make
the
sure
ark,
there's several.
Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu, just close the curtain, please. This is the first time you gentlemen have opened and closed the ark in this congregation? Yes. Okay, we're going to make Shechayonu right now. Baruch atah
Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Shechayanu, V'yanu, V'yanu, V'chazeh. Amen.
Thank you. You may be seated. And I'm looking at the lower right on 28. We'll do this reading together. Now, for quite some time, I was able to see Orion, Orion's belt, that kind of thing. Never able to pick out the physical components of a constellation, but that was one I had. But now Orion's gone.
There's an app for that.
Sorry?
There's an app for that.
He's where?
There's an app for it.
Oh, yes, I'm sure there is, yes. Okay. What I really want is the flashlight the guy used in the Hayden Planetarium with the arrow on it. The coolest
I
thing,
think there's
yes.
something.
All right, well, let's read it
For
together.
some reason.
Beloved are you, together. Beloved are you, eternal God, by whose design the evening falls, by whose command dimensions open up and eons pass away, stars spin in their orbits. You set the rhythms of day and night. The alternation of light and darkness sings your creative word. In rising sun and in spreading dusk, Creator of all, you are made manifest. Eternal, everlasting God, may we always be aware of your dominion. Beloved are you, Adonai, for this hour of nightfall. Ma'avir yom u'mei v'layla, ma'afil ben yom u'ben layla, t'nai tzevahut shemo, el chai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu le'olam vo'ed. Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'ariv ha'ravim. Amen. All right, we'll continue with the Shema on page 30. Let's cover our eyes to show God cannot be seen. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Uncover the eyes. Baruch Shem Kevod, Malchuto Le'olam Vahed. And reading the English, you shall love. You shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. And these words which I command you this day you shall take to heart. Teach them diligently to your children, and recite them at home and away, night and day. Bind them as a sign upon your hand, as a reminder above your eyes. Inscribe them upon the doorposts of your homes, and upon your gates. We'll read silently the bottom paragraph, as well as the tzitzit paragraph on 31. Reading silently. Adonai Elohechem Emet. And the Mi Kamocha, page 32. Mi Kamocha B'Helim Adonai. Mi Kamocha Me'od HaKodesh. Me'orati Lo Tosef Eleh. Malchut Haro Vanecha. Okayam lifnei Moshe, Seili adu v'yamru, Adonai yimlok le'olam moed. Ennemar kifat Adonai ti Yaakov, u'gi'alo mi'ad chazak mimenu, Baruch atah Adonai, Go'al Yisrael. 33, the top left-hand paragraph in the Minhag HaMakom, our congregational custom is that we go around and if there's somebody you know, friend, relative, Jew, Gentile, anyone at all, who needs Refu'ahShelemah, a quick and speedy recovery, just mention their name. And afterwards, we will all read together that healing paragraph. And as always, we think about our brothers and sisters in the embattled state of Israel, as well as our brave troops defending our country all over the world. Okay. Refu'ahShelemah. Yes.
Chaim Yehuda ben Mordechai, David ben Mordechai,
Refu'ahShelemah. Okay, yes. Refu'ahShelemah. Okay, yes.
Chayashur Bas Rosa.
Refu'ahShelemah. Yes.
Michael Rice.
Refu'ahShelemah. Yes.
Laura Duran.
Refu'ahShelemah. Okay.
Laurie Belen.
Refu'ahShelemah.
Carol Jankov.
Refu'ahShelemah.
Katrin.
Was it the same person?
No, Carol Jankov.
Refu'ahShelemah.
And Jeffrey Stern.
Yes. Refu'ahShelemah. Yes, get better. Yes.
Andrea and Jesse.
Refu'ahShelemah.
Howard Shulman,
Refu'ahShelemah.
Serafina Klein, Russell Schottger, Bart Reynolds, Bart Dozer.
Refu'ahShelemah. Also Howard E. Lackman. Refu'ahShelemah. Yes.
Laurie Christopher Mayo.
Refu'ahShelemah.
Pearl Katz,
Refu'ahShelemah.
Marsha Goodhart,
Refu'ahShelemah.
Lola,
Refu'ahShelemah. God knows who it is. Refu'ahShelemah. Yes. Okay. All right, let's read together that top left-hand paragraph. Help us, Adonai, to lie down in peace, and awaken us again, our sovereign, to life. Spread over us your shelter of peace. Guide us with your good counsel. Save us because of your mercy. Shield us from enemies and pestilence, from starvation, sword, and sorrow. Remove the evil forces that surround us. Shelter us in the shadow of your wings, O God, who watches over us and delivers us, our gracious and merciful rule. Guard our coming and our going. Grant us life and peace, now and always. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Praise you, Adonai, who spreads the shelter of peace over us, over all his people Israel, over Jerusalem and the entire world. Uflos aleinu sukat shlomecha, baruch atah Adonai, apolei sukat shalom aleinu v'al kol amo Yisrael, v'al Yerushalayim, v'al kol ha'olam kulo. Amen. Page 34. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם אותי לעולם אותי לעולם ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם וביום השביעי שבת וינפש Shabbat v'yinafash, Shabbat v'yinafash, v'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. Please rise, half Kaddish, bottom of 34. Yitkadash Shemerabba, Amen. Yalma divrach irutei, v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayecha ru'yamecha, v'chayecha beit Yisrael, v'agala, v'agala, u'mizman kari, v'yimeru amen. Rabba mevorach, leolam leomaya, yitvarach, v'yishtabach, yitpoar v'yitromam yitnaseh, yitadar, yitaleh, yitalah, shemei v'kudish arihu, li'elam, kol birchata, v'shirata, Tushbechata v'nechemata, Damiram v'yama, v'yimeru amen. All right, the Amidah, the standing silent prayer, 35b to 38. For your information, will be Mavarch and HaChodesh, we'll be blessing the new month of Adar tomorrow, which is Tuesday and Wednesday. When you're finished, you may be seated. you haven't yet finished the Amidah, please continue. Otherwise, I'm on page 38 at the top, the Shalom Rav, and this is Debbie Friedman, assuming you may know. Shalom Rav, Al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Olam. Shalom Rav, Al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Olam. Ki atahu melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki atahu melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav, Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Rav, Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Le'olam. V'tov b'einecha livarech et Amcha Yisrael b'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. שלום רב ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. שלום רב ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. תשים לעולם. Thank you. We're on 47. Actually, we're not on 47. Page 48 is the full Kaddish. Yitkada v'kada shemei rabba amen. Yelmad yivrach yerutei v'yimlich machutei. V'chayei chona v'mei chona v'chayei v'chol beit Yisrael. V'akalov v'zman koriv imru amen. V'yishmei rabba mehorach. V'yolam le'olam le'olmaya. Yivarach. Yivarach v'yishabach v'yipoar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmei l'kudusha b'richu. V'yilam min kol b'chata v'shirata v'shb'chata v'nachmata damiran b'yoma v'imru amen. V'yalal tzlo tonu v'otun v'chol Yisrael k'dem v'ni v'shmaya v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim alein v'al Yisrael v'imru amen. U'oseh shalom b'romav U'yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael Imru amen. Yaseh shalom Shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom Shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Imru amen. All right, 49 is the Kiddush. Please rise as the ladies pass out the wine.
For real?
This is a real wine.
It's all rolled around.
I'm driving. Good. Sorry for over your head.
The chauffeur.
He always
Have you hit my wine?
Make
It's so
more.
weird. Yes. Oh, I don't mind.
Watch, watch.
Juice, Liz? Do you want juice? It's juice. She got the high test.
I want the cheap stuff. Thank you, down.
Get you high test blood test.
People on the balcony.
What's your stuff?
All right, we're good. Thank you very much. And freedom.
This Paul is.
Savriman Varbanam Abatai Baruch Adonai
Eloheinu melech olam, Borei hagaven. Amen.
Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech olam Asher Kedishanu B'Mitzvotav V'Tzivanu Shabbat Kodsho V'Yavav Ratzon V'Chilanu Zikaron L'Maaseh L'Reishit Ilan Tehillah V'Krei Kodesh Zecher Mitzvah V'Tzvayim Ilanu V'Achata Ilanu V'Dashta Ilanu Shabbat Kodecha Yavav Ratzon V'Chilanu Baruch atah Adonai V'kadesh HaShabbat. Amen. L'chaim v'shalom ha'simchas. All right, we'll turn to the Aleinu on page 51. Arthur, would you and Ida honor us by opening the Ark? The Aleinu?
If somebody said no, what would happen?
Bolt of lightning would come through the ceiling.
This would be good. No, that has never happened. Okay. Aleinu
Shabbat V'Adon Hakol V'Aseh Gedulah V'Aseh Breshit Shalom Asav V'Yuhen HaRatzon V'Lo Samanu V'Shvat V'Adama Shalom Sam V'Keinu Gahem V'Yor Aleinu V'Echol HaMalam V'Arachim Horim U'Kishtacharim U'Modim Lifnei Melech Malkei HaModim HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shehu Notei Shamayim V'Yosef Haaretz U'Moshe Mikoro V'Shamayim V'Marav U'Shinat Tuzo U'Shinat Tuzo V'Govei Neroni Hu Eloheinu Echad Emes Alkeinu Echad Zulato Kakatu B'Torato V'Atat Hayom V'Atat Hayom V'Hashemota Elohecha Ki Adonai Hu Elohim Shashamayim V'Imarav V'Haaretz V'Haaretz
Doors are closed. We do want to thank the Schwartzes for not saying no. And we'll do the border Scottish. Okay. All right, on a sadder note, we're saying Mourner's Kaddish. If anyone is required to say Mourner's Kaddish, it's on page 52. Yitgadal v'yitgadash Shemei Rabbah Amen. Yalmad yivrach Yerutei v'yamlich malchutei. V'chayei chon v'yimei chon v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael. V'hagalau v'zman kariv v'yimru Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah mevorach v'yolamu le'omaya. Yitvorach v'yishtabach v'yitvo'ar v'yitromach v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal Shemei d'kudisha b'richu. V'elam min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbachata v'nechamata. Ta'miran v'yalma v'yimru Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min Shemaya. V'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimru Amen. Oseh shalom b'rumav. Uyaseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'yimru amen. Please be seated, and before we do the Adon Olam, the closing song, a few words from our wonderful temple president, who's Rita Fleming Klein.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shalom.
So wonderful to be with you, new friends. It's just delicious. It's always delicious. It's always delicious here, but especially tonight with new friends. I have wonderful things to tell you about. Tomorrow we are celebrating 2 extraordinary volunteers. All of our volunteers are extraordinary, but some really shine. And tonight, one of them is here with us, our wonderful Doreen Christopher.
Look in the mail out there. Thank you.
Who can be counted on for everything. All we have to do is say, Doreen, she goes, what do you need? I'll be there. And we're going to be honoring Doreen and Stuart Pepper tomorrow. We're going to be doing this at least once a year. We survive on volunteers. That's how we get things done. And we have a marvelous group of volunteers. There's always something to do if you'd like to volunteer. But we especially want to signal out, and we may be doing it twice a year because we do have quite an extraordinary group of wonderful volunteers. Tomorrow is our more traditional service, and afterwards we're going to have a kiddush to honor our volunteers, and after the kiddush, Rabbi has his class, his regular Saturday afternoon class, which will be on...
Yes, we haven't done him for a while, and I have a new book about him, Rebbe Nachman of Bratslav. He's really up there as far as my having a favorite Hasidic Rebbe.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. Rabbi's classes are remarkable and not to be missed, really. I know I say that every week, and every week he surpasses the class that he did the week before. He also has a class on Wednesday evenings at 4:30 on an adult Hebrew class, and at 7 o'clock a current events class.
So if I could do a shameless plug for that second class.
Sure.
I mean, the first class is very important, and I'm glad
We like shameless plugs.
Yes, but there are a lot of current events these days, and we really try not to offend anybody. And we always say, but we're glad that you're coming. So please join us.
Right. And on this Sunday at 3 o'clock is the second event of the Annette Bazelov Finger Holocaust Center for Remembrance and Learning. We are going to be featuring the paperclip project. I know that it's familiar to everyone, but it's been a while, and the refresher to really understand what it took to have children in a school in Tennessee understand what 6 million really meant. Please come. You will be given a paper clip when you come in. It's Temple Shalom style, so it will be a rose gold paper clip. It's very beautiful. But when you come in, we would like you to put it on as in honor of the in Norway during the Nazi reign of terror. The Norwegians wore a paper clip because we had to wear a yellow star. And that's how this whole project began. So that's Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock. Our next upcoming event is Purim. Don't want to miss it. It's Friday the 13th. Never mind. It's really a pre-Shabbat Purim celebration. We're going to have a little spiel. We're going to have a little light meal. Everything in the meal is going to be shaped like Haman's hat, so it'll be a little strange but wonderful. And then we're going to have our Friday night service. So please do come. I know all of our Friday night people will come. Those of you who are listening at home, come for Purim. Be with us. We can wear costumes if you like. Yeah, if you like. There is. It's $10 just to cover the cost. It's too much, I know, but we don't overcharge for anything. But we want Temple to just to cover costs. So come. At the end of the month, we're going to have our Passover Mitzvah Day, where we are collecting a Pesach kosher food for families in need, Jewish families in need. We will be collecting them here. It will be on Tuesday, the 31st, and on that day we're going to have an extraordinary speaker. His name is Dr. Hodes. He is part of the JDC, the Jewish Distribution Committee. He has spent the last 30 years in Ethiopia, healing the sick at no cost at all. He has stories to tell. He's another person who we can take tremendous pride in, and he is coming here to Temple Sholom. So come and be with us. There will be something in the bulletin this week, and we will have a biography of Dr. Hodes in it as well. I hope that you will attend. Having you come to all our events is the most important thing of all. Then I'm not sure of the exact time, but I think it's going to be evening. That seems to work well for a little coffee and cake after dinner, maybe about 7 o'clock. We'll figure out, he hasn't arrived in the States yet, so we're going to find out this week about what time is convenient for him. But it should be very interesting. We are going to be inviting our city commissioners, the mayor, and Ted Deutsch. So we really want to reach out to the community and let them know we're here. And we're here for every Jewish person, every Jewish family, and for our total community, which is made up of non-Jews as well. Temple Sholom is here with a heartbeat and open doors and open arms for everyone in our community. So be with us. Pesach, the first Seder on April 8th. There's information already in the bulletin. I have the menus ready in the office. You have a choice of wonderful dinners catered by Diamond Caterers. It's going to be a musical Pesach too, because we can't help it. We are so fortunate to have our Rabbi Mark and Cantor Javier who inject joy into our traditional Jewish lives. So just come and be with us. A sweet Shabbos, and come for coffee and cake right after the service.
You can register online for Pesach.
You can register online for Pesach. You can almost register online for everything. We have this marvelous
You can, for
program
everything.
now. We're in the 21st century, so
I'll put that on
you
there for
can
you.
do it.
I'll take care of it.
But a sweet Shabbos to everybody.
If you're out of commission, I'll have to tell you, have to make sure somebody takes care of it.
I really, probably, and I'm not just saying it because she's my president and dear friend, but probably the most dynamic temple president I've ever met. So thank you so much. That's number one. Let's see number two. Is Dr. Hodes' first name? Do we know?
I did know it this morning.
Okay. So tomorrow morning, God willing, we'll tell you. That's good. No, because there was an Aubrey Hodes who wrote a biography of Martin Buber. All right. Well, Purim is coming, and we're on page 54, and we've got a bunch of stuff happening, and I personally want to thank Doreen for getting the bugs out of my laptop and showing me that it has to be on so you can use it. Which I had no idea. Okay. So what's more Purim Dick than to sing Adon Olam to the tune of Ghost Rabbis in the Sky? I was thinking of doing, oh gosh, it was from Pajama Game, Hernando's Hideaway. But you want to do that instead? We can do that. Yes, Pajama Game was written by, I think it was Frank Lesser, who was very unique. You had Lerner and Lowe, which was 1.5 Jews. You had Rodgers and Hammerstein, who were 2 Jews. And you had everybody on Broadway was Jewish except for Cole Porter. And the story is that once Cole Porter went to George Gershwin, both rest in peace, and said, George, he says, George, how do I write Jewish? And Gershwin said to him, write the music and then drop it into the minor key. So that's really what happens. I'll give you an example, okay? I know we're over time, but I'll just say real quick that George Gershwin is in New Orleans trying to write what eventually becomes Porgy and Bess. And he's looking for a really nice hit for the show. And supposedly, this was told to me by a klezmer musician from Casco Bay, Maine, so you can believe it. And he's right across the street. His hotel is right across the street from Little Stiebel, Little Shul. And on Shabbos morning, he hears them going, Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMvorach. So he writes, it ain't necessarily so. See, I mean, it's just one of those weird stories that so outrageous it must be true. Okay, let's do this. Frank Lesser wrote all by himself is what I wanted to say. He wrote the music, he wrote the lyrics. He did Damn Yankees too, I think. Adon Olam Hashem Olam B'terem Kol Yitzir Nivra Li'et Nasa B'chetzel Kol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Olei Hare Yechlotapo. We should dance this. Levan Ado Yimlot Torah Tehu Haya Tehu Hover Tehu Yeh B'Tifara Olei Tehu Echad V'Yein Sheni Leham Shelo Lehafbirav Veli Reshit Veli Tachlit Velo Haos V'Hamisra Olei Ehu Eli Chai Goali V'Tzor Chevli V'Yetzara Vehu Nisi Umanosli V'Nat Chosi V'Yom Ekra Olei V'Yam Ado Avki Bruchi V'Yet Ishan V'Yahira V'Yim Ruchi V'Yati. Big finish. Ado Noili V'Lohira Olei. I know there's a second line too, but we never quite worked that in. Please rise for the closing benediction. Yivarechacha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May the Lord bless you and keep you. Yo'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Kein Yiratzon. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May the Lord turn his face unto you and grant you peace. We'll say Amen. Shabbat Shalom. Good Shabbat.